Crown Point County, Indiana, 1934. The Crown Point prison witnessed something that haunted its guards for a long time. How could a man, alone, unarmed, without accomplices on the outside, and without any help, manage to pass by 12 armed guards and walk out through the front door of one of the prisons considered the most secure in the United States? How did the boldness of a single man overpower an entire prison system and become a case study to this day? It was March 1934, and the Crown Point County Jail in Indiana had just received its most famous prisoner, John Dillinger. John Herbert Dillinger was an American bank robber, regarded by some as a dangerous criminal, and by others idolized as a 20th century Robin Hood. This was because many Americans blamed the banks for the Great Depression of the 1930s, and Dillinger robbed only banks. Dillinger earned the nickname Jackrabbit for his speed during robberies and escapes from the police. He was also an athletic figure, having been considered a good baseball player while in prison. His actions, along with those of other criminals of the 1930s such as Bonnie and Clyde and Ma Barker, dominated media attention. The press began referring to them as public enemies between 1931 and 1935, a period during which the FBI was developing. Dillinger turned to crime and was arrested in 1924, being sent to the Indiana State Prison. While still incarcerated, he met well-known bank robbers such as Harry Pierpont from the city of Muncie in eastern Indiana, who played a key role in forming Dillinger's gang and acted as a criminal mentor to him during his time in Indiana. Pierpont was considered more strategic and disciplined than Dillinger himself. He also met Russell Booby Clark from Terre Haute in Vigo County, western Indiana. Russell worked in the prison laundry. He was not directly part of the gang, but he was involved in the broader criminal network, including robberies and logistics. He helped facilitate the escape of Pierpont, Clark, and others. Dillinger remained imprisoned in Indiana until 1933, when he was released on parole. After his release, he joined the criminals who had assisted him. Due to the notoriety he had gained, the group became known as the First Dillinger Gang, which in addition to Pierpont and Clark included Charles Makeley, Edward W. Schaus Jr., Harry Copeland, Oklahoma Jack Clark, Walter Dietrich, and John Red Hamilton. Other members, such as Homer Van Meter and Lester Gillis, Babyface Nelson, would later form the second Dillinger Gang after his escape from Crown Point, Indiana. According to the press, Dillinger used various ruses in his bank robberies. He disguised himself as a security alarm salesman in Indiana and Ohio. On another occasion, his gang posed as a film production company that wanted to stage a bank robbery. It was said that Dillinger's gang stole around $300,000, equivalent to about $5 million today, from dozens of banks. A few months after leaving the Indiana State Prison, he was arrested again in Lima, Ohio, but his gang freed him by killing Sheriff Jesse Sarber. Most of the gang was captured later that year in Tucson, Arizona, during a fire at the historic Hotel Congress. Dillinger was arrested and sent to the Crown Point Jail in Indiana. He was charged on suspicion of the murder of Officer William O'Malley during a bank shootout in East Chicago. During the proceedings, a famous photograph was taken of Dillinger pointing a gun at prosecutor Robert Estill. The United States government had publicly declared that this man would never leave that place. The county sheriff posed for photographs with him. Newspapers called Crown Point escape-proof. The press even photographed Dillinger smiling with his arm around the shoulder of the prosecutor who would put him on trial. What happened inside that cell in the following weeks remains a subject of debate among historians, and that is exactly where the mystery begins. The official version claims that Dillinger carved a fake gun out of a broom handle. Others say he used soap painted black with shoe polish. Some argue that the weapon was not even convincing and that any guard paying attention for 2 seconds would have noticed, but none of them did. On the morning of March 28, Dillinger walked out of his cell, pointing that object at a guard. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He did nothing that would draw attention from afar. He simply walked. With the calm voice of someone who knows exactly what he is doing, he subdued one guard after another. One by one, the staff were locked inside the very cells that were meant to hold Dillinger. And then came the detail that turns this story from bold to unbelievable. Before leaving, Dillinger took 2 real submachine guns from the prison's own armory. He left the fake weapon behind. He took the real ones and kept walking. He crossed the yard, passed through the gates. Not a single shot was fired. He walked out the front door of Crown Point with a smile, stole the sheriff's car, and disappeared toward the state of Illinois, crossing state lines in a move that would turn his pursuit into a federal matter. The escape brought embarrassment to Sheriff Lillian Hawley, who threatened Dillinger's life. By crossing state lines, Dillinger committed a crime that placed him under the jurisdiction of the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI, was furious. That was the moment when Dillinger's story stopped being about a criminal and started becoming about something bigger, about what happens when an entire system is challenged. Crown Point was a symbol, and he had shattered that symbol with a weapon that wasn't even real. But here's the part most people don't know, and the part that completely changes how you see what happened that day. Dillinger did not act on impulse. He spent weeks observing, memorizing routines, identifying which guard was more anxious, which was more relaxed, who arrived late for their shift, who avoided eye contact when speaking. He studied that prison like a true architect, not to build, but to find where the walls were thinnest. The fake gun was not the plan. It was the trigger. The plan was entirely psychological. He knew the guards had been conditioned to react to the visual stimulus of a weapon, not to evaluate whether it was real, but simply to react. And in an environment where no one expected him to attempt an escape, because the prison was considered the most secure in the United States, that reaction became predictable. Overconfidence had created carelessness, and Dillinger used that carelessness as his key. From that point on, the story takes a different turn. Because the escape from Crown Point was not the end, it was the beginning of the most dangerous period of Dillinger's career, and paradoxically, the moment he became an almost mythological figure to part of the American public. The country was in the depths of the Great Depression. Banks had destroyed entire families, and here was a man who escaped from prison, robbed banks, and seemed untouchable. Newspapers could not stop covering his every move. People even sent letters to the FBI asking them to stop pursuing him. The FBI increased the pressure. Hoover named Dillinger the first public enemy #1 in American history, but capturing him was proving nearly impossible. Dillinger changed identities as easily as he changed shirts. It is said that he even underwent procedures to alter the markings on his fingers, burning his fingerprints with acid, in an attempt to erase any trace that could connect him to his past. The pain must have been unbearable. He did it anyway. That is what sets Dillinger apart from most criminals of his time. He wasn't just escaping, he was reinventing who he was, layer by layer, in a survival effort that combined ruthless intelligence with a coldness that unsettled even the most experienced investigators. But every story has its end. In April, the gang appeared in Manitowish Waters, Wisconsin, looking for a hideout. They were reported to the Chicago prosecutor's office, which contacted the FBI. Soon, a team of agents led by Hugh Clegg and Melvin Purvis surrounded the hideout, but the outlaws were tipped off. In the shootout that followed, the gang scattered and escaped. Agent W. Carter Baum was shot and killed by Babyface Nelson. In the summer of 1934, Dillinger disappeared from sight. He went to Chicago and used the name Jimmy Lawrence. He began a relationship with Polly Hamilton, who did not know his true identity. But the FBI found his car, quickly deducing that he was in the city. On the night of the 22nd of July 1934, 4 months after the Crown Point escape, John Dillinger left the Biograph Theater in Chicago. He had just watched a movie, a gangster film, some say, with an irony almost too theatrical to be a coincidence. Outside, FBI agents were waiting. A woman in a red dress had given away his location. Anna Sage, a Romanian immigrant facing deportation, had made a deal. She became known as the Lady in Red. She was deported anyway. Dillinger realized the ambush when it was already too late. He drew his gun, ran toward an alley. The agents opened fire. He fell on the sidewalk at 31 years old. And here is the final detail that remains. Minutes after his body was removed from the scene, people began to gather, strangers, neighbors, onlookers. They dipped handkerchiefs, scraps of paper, anything they had into the blood left on the pavement to keep it. To hold on to a piece of something they could not quite name, the idea of someone who had looked at a system that said, "You're going nowhere," and answered by walking out the front door. The weapon he used to escape from Crown Point, it was never definitively found. It may still exist somewhere in a museum, a basement, in the hands of a collector who doesn't fully understand what they have. Or it may have already turned to dust. just like all the certainty Crown Point once had about itself on that March morning in 1934, before a man with a piece of wood proved that the greatest vulnerability of any system is not in its bars, but in the people within it.